Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
You're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. We're wrapping up L5P week, Chris.
Dude, I am so sick of L5Ps.
Quit playing.
I'm serious.
Quit playing.
Stop calling me about support. Stop calling me for tunes. When it's available, it's available. No, I'm just kidding. It's super exciting. You know, it's been a long time coming. It feels literally like an eternity.
Yeah.
You know? I'm thankful it came when it came, to say the least.
So L5Ps, we've been waiting almost 2 years for them to be able to be tuned. You now can get your ECMs unlocked from the guys over at HP Tuners. You can buy tunes at this point, sparsely depending on who's selling them and where they're available as of today. But it is here. So if you've been thinking about it or considering it, it's finally a real option. We don't have to see you get badgered on the L5P Facebook group for asking what about tuning. There's seen some hate go on over that over the last few months.
Or when the L5P tunes were actually like being presented and videos were getting leaked, guys are like, "Oh, that's just an LML with an L5P hood." It's like, you fucking idiot. Like,
I want to meet. If you were one of our listeners and you made that comment, please send me a message.
Please send Paul the message. I don't want to talk to you. I mean, I get it. Speculation's always a big thing, and people probably make jokes. You know, it's hard to sense sarcasm and humor on text. But I mean, there were a lot of people, and you guys all jumped. I shouldn't say you guys. I don't want to, group people, but people jump bandwagons for sure.
Be sensitive to people's snowflakishness.
Yeah, man, like me. I wear my heart on my shoulder.
So this week we've been doing all the L5P episodes. We've talked about just about everything to do with L5Ps, but really where the Diesel Performance Podcast was able to kick off with L5Ps was Gale Banks.
Yeah.
So he came on the podcast. He did some over-the-phone interviews with us. I want to say 2 or 3 there. And then we actually went out to the facility and met him. We made some videos while we were out there. The stuff's really great. Make sure you check out Diesel Performance Podcast YouTube channel if you have not. I don't know if you guys know that. We do have a YouTube channel. We'd love to see you go on there and subscribe and like all of our videos.
Please.
You can get a chance to see some more stuff. So Gale Banks talking about swirl and heads and breaking down the turbo and breaking down the rods and things like that. We have all that video available, so make sure to check it out. But we thought we'd throw this one up to the big guy. This is the Godfather of Diesel, Gale Banks episode. This is the first one we did with him.
It's like OG footage.
This is
like
where
OG
we started
episode.
Our education into the L5P. So
cool.
Enjoy the show, and we'll kick off next week with a brand new episode. No more rebroadcasting, and we'll actually have some great insight for you guys on a couple of really secret topics.
Yeah.
So
very cool, guys.
We'll talk to you then. Thank you for joining us again. This is Paul Wilson.
And I'm Danny Voss.
And you're listening to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Special episode today. We're also co-hosting with
Nick Prignitz.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Nick. Always glad to have you down here. We have a very special guest. I'm so excited to introduce Mr. Gale Banks. How's it going today, Gale?
It's going real good today. Great Friday.
I hear you there. It's Friday, so it can't be all bad, right?
Yeah.
Gale, obviously, commonly referred to on the internet, the Godfather of Diesel. You've been around Diesel Performance, I think, as long as Diesel Performance has been around. There's a ton of stuff that we want to talk to you about. We've even discussed breaking up into 2 episodes because we feel you have so much information to give our listeners.
Well, I have 58 years worth, so...
Okay, so a day or 2.
Yeah, I think the goal here was we did 100 episodes of a podcast, right? So that qualifies us to have Gale Banks on the show, and now this is our capstone. So let's do it.
Absolutely, Gale. We get every guest started by asking, how'd you get your start in Diesel Performance?
Well, it was preceded by turbocharger performance, and that was preceded by supercharger performance. So about 1958, I sold my first engine, and 1960, I built a blown Buick for a boat. And then I saw the turbochargers that were down at the surplus store on some of the P-38 engines from World War II, and started thinking about turbocharging, and lo and behold, the guys, TRW, came up with a turbo for the Corvair around mid-60s, and Olds did an F-85 Jetfire, I think they called it, with a turbo and water meth injection. And I thought, you know what? This is tomorrow. I want to get into turbochargers. So we did our first turbocharged engine in 1966.
Wow.
We've been an engine customer and an engine manufacturer, an engine customer of General Motors, Ford, Oldsmobile, and others. By that, I mean we don't go down to the dealer and buy an engine. We go to the plant and buy a lot of engines. And we've been doing that since 1969. We started building twin-turbo offshore boat engines and racing a lot of boat endurance worldwide. So as we moved, towards 78, 79, we were 10 years in as an engine customer at General Motors engine plants, Tonawanda, New York, and Flint, Michigan, and Toluca, Mexico. 4-cylinder, small block, and big block. And they had done the 350 Olds when Hugh McInnes did his first book on turbocharging. The cover photo was the underhood of his Oldsmobile with 2 Ray J's on it. And, of course, he put the crankshaft in the street. They were prone to do that. So, it was kind of a huge black mark for GM. They wanted to make it right. So they kind of worked with Detroit Diesel, and they came up with a new engine, 6.2-liter engine. And they sent me a couple of them late 1978 and said, hey, here's what we're going to do for our 82 Chevy and GMC pickups. Why not you turbocharge these and see how you can do against, say, a 3208 Cat, which was also a very popular marine engine back then. Well, a 3208 Cat probably has 4 times the engine mass or weight.
Yeah, that thing's a monster.
Yeah. And, the 6.2, they had qualified at 145 horsepower at that point, late 78. So they sent me a couple of pre-production engines. I turbocharged them and found all the weakness in the 6.2. But I also found that it would be very comfortable with a moderate amount of turbocharging. So kind of worked with Stanadyne, Rusamaster on the pump configuration, and we had run a Corvette at Bonneville in 1980. We're working on these diesels. We run a Corvette at Bonneville and went 240 on a 202 record, and that became the world's fastest passenger car. So the guys at Pontiac were doing a new Firebird, and they called me a late 1980 and said, hey, we want you to go 20 miles an hour faster. You can do that by putting your powertrain in our upcoming Firebird, which was the 82 Firebird. And this was John Chanella, the stylist, and Bob Dorn, the chief engineer of Pontiac. They saw the article on our Corvette in Popular Hot Rodding. 240 Sporty was the title on the article. Mm-hmm. So I says, hey, I'd love to do that, but you're not selling the car yet. And they said, well, come to Mesa, Arizona, and get your Firebird. So just keep it out of sight for the next 2 years. So we developed a Bonneville car, and the Firebird ultimately, we ran it repeatedly at Bonneville through the 80s, but the first time out, it ran 260. I'm talking about a thing where the headlights still come up and the power windows still work and the surround sound is still there. And
a fully functional unit.
We did a twin turbo big block that was right at about 1,800 horsepower. Way more than we could put through those Bonneville tires.
Yeah, I can imagine. Not much there.
Yeah, we went up there crazy. And we went 260 two-way average with the same powertrain. It was cosmic. Guys promise you a number, and by God, it ran it. That doesn't happen very often.
No, it's turbocharging really showing what it can do.
And we're talking diesel here, so I'll just cap this with the car ultimately ran the best mile of 283 miles an hour. This is 1987. So that made it the world's fastest door slammer for a decade and a half or so.
Wow.
Until some friends of mine built another Firebird. My engine builder built them an engine, and they went 302, I think.
That's so crazy.
About 15 years later. Anyhow, at the time I got the Firebird, the guys, Pontiac's in Pontiac, Michigan, and so is GMC. Pontiac was in Pontiac, Michigan. Sorry about that. And they're gone. So I got a pre-production pair of GMC pickups to support the Bonneville deal. One was a half-ton with a manual transmission, and the other was a one-ton dually with a 3-speed automatic. I think that was the 145 horsepower.
Ooh.
So first time I hooked a trailer to that dually and went over Cajon Pass, going over to Vegas with the car trailer behind. It's an enclosed trailer. It took me so long to get up Cajon Pass to that big thermometer in the sky there at the top. It was so long on that grade that when I got to the top, I had to shave. It was like the next day. It's like I went to bed and got up again. It took forever. I just went, I got to turbocharge these. So came in six Saturdays in a row and kind of cobbled up all the pieces and got one of them turbocharged. And mind you, the trucks aren't even on the street yet.
Yeah.
This is months behind, maybe close to a year before they were on the street. And by the way, they kept me in a new Corvette every year up through 1984.
Wow!
Because I was doing a lot of Corvette experimental turbo stuff for them. None of it ever saw production.
After 84, did you just tell them you don't want to drive Corvettes anymore?
No, my Angel retired.
Oh.
My Angel, yeah. And I also told them, this diesel thing by 84, it was going strong. We came out that in late 81. We came out with a turbo kit and exhaust system for the 6.2 in the pickups and Suburbans, and that went real well.
I'm sorry, Gale. Real quick, I'm sorry, Gale. What year did you say you guys built turbo kits for the 6.2?
Actually, the first one we did was in 81.
That's so crazy
early
to
81.
Me. Have you guys ever?
Huh?
We're all looking at each other, and I'm shrugging my shoulders because I can't remember the last guy I saw with a modified 6.2. Like the 6.5 guys and the IDI Ford guys have started to message our Facebook page and ask us to do a podcast, and we keep telling them nobody modifies those trucks. We're not going to do a performance podcast about trucks nobody modifies. I had no idea you guys have been turbocharging them for 30 years.
You're not old enough. So that's an envious comment, by the way, guys. This is the old man telling you you're not old enough. So I wish I was your age. So the bottom line, I still sell that package. In fact, in the NHRA museum, both those pre-production engines are there. One of them has, I will argue to my death, we had the first product, the seminal product of the diesel power aftermarket.
That's so
that
cool.
That was product number one. And we still sell it today. Honest to God, about 30 to 50 of them a year,
wow.
The turbo kit.
Yeah, go figure, right?
There's 56 2s on the road still?
I know. You never see them. That's interesting. I mean, we're in the Rust Belt here, so I assume they're still on the road down south and out west.
Yeah.
California pre-emissions, right?
Yeah, right.
Man, there was no emissions on those. You didn't have to. Can't delete what's not there.
Right.
You know.
Right.
One thing the turbo did, it really cleaned up the smoke. You know, it gave you some oxygen to deal with that fuel in cylinder.
Yeah, you got to appreciate that.
Just like God intended, by the way. It says somewhere in the Bible that if you inject the fuel into the cylinder, you burn it there. You don't put it into the air and not use the horsepower. In other words, smoke is horsepower you can see but not feel.
Preach on, brother. We love that. That's our mantra here.
I was going to say, it's a big topic on the podcast. We talk all the time about, the history of diesel performance. A lot of time includes smoke equals power. And we spend a lot of our time professionally and on the podcast here educating people that it's wasted power. Yeah, it's missed potential.
Exactly. Turbo limited classes have done so much to the detriment of the diesel performance aftermarket by introducing these overly rich, smoky tractors. And, when you impose these turbocharger restrictions on these classes, it's just like, you set the precedent.
Yeah.
Smoke is power, and it's just not,
Well, I'm not knocking it. I mean, everybody has his thing, so to speak.
Sure.
So anyhow, the 6.2s, we did diminish the smoke quite a bit. They were late on coming out with the 6.5, and they were not selling well because in '83, Ford came with the 6.9 Navistar, or International Harvester engine, as we used to call it back then.
Look out.
Yeah.
And we immediately turboed that engine as well. And I got to tell you something. Nobody in SEMA knew anything about diesel. So, I've been on the board of directors of SEMA, and SEMA started in an office across from my speed shop back in the 60s, Eric Grant's insurance office. So I couldn't even afford the dues. But all I'm saying is this whole deal with smoke, the entire thing with emissions and etc. It is something wherein I think the first statement we made, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but the first record set for the with a common rail diesel, this being a Cummins, and we can get back to this in a minute, but we set a record. I think it was in 2000 or 2001 at Bonneville. I took a pre-production Cummins common rail. In fact, Banks Power hot rodded the first common rail Cummins ever, because there weren't any in trucks when we did it. I did it with the guys at the Skunk Works. They're what they called the Ole building outside Columbus, Indiana, and they were working on the V8 at the time. They wanted me to run the V8 at Bonneville, the one that's now in the Nissan pickup. This is, oh man, we're around 2000. Anyhow, we ran that common rail, no emissions equipment, of course. We put in the Dakota, kind of like John DeLorean putting the big V8 in the little Pontiac Le Mans. And
yeah, I remember reading about this truck.
I was right next to it on the highway one time, drooling over it.
Yeah, and he literally was telling me a story about seeing the truck you're discussing right now on a trailer 10 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. And that's when I knew about Banks Performance because I have a buddy with the 1985 6.9 liter Ford diesel with a Banks kit on it, and all he does is still brag about it from 1985.
He needs to get over it.
From Gale himself. Let him to get over it.
Can't wait to show him the show.
So basically, they were late coming out with the 6.5. A guy named John Rock took over GMC. He was the general manager of GMC, and he calls me up one day and says, "Hey, I'm coming out for the International Truck Show at Anaheim." how about having breakfast? I says, that's cool. So he came out, we had breakfast, and he told me, I got a problem. I'm not selling 6.2s. And this was about 1985. He said, the press isn't interested. We're working on a 6.5, and over in Romulus, a guy named Dick Hamparian was working on that. And but we're late. And the engine plant in Moreno, Ohio, which is the predecessor of the Duramax plant. The engine plant in Moreno, Ohio is down to 18% of its capacity.
Oh my God!
You don't do that. I mean, that means you're bleeding money, hundreds of thousands a day. You know? And he says, we want to be in the diesel business, but at this rate, you know, we're going to have to bail, shut down the plant, buy an engine from somebody else, do something. He says, we need some news. He says, you've been turbocharging our trucks. We don't see any engine failures. We don't feel you in our warranty costs. So how about we work together and we offer a dealer-specified option, which is the Banks turbo on the new truck.
6.5, yeah. That's how the 6.5 turbo. Oh, okay.
No, on the 6.2s.
Okay.
So you could get a 6.2 turboed from the factory?
Yeah, we did it. We went up to Romulus, Michigan. No, not Romulus. In this case, it was
Moraine,
north of Warren. We partnered up with some guys that the Rinke family. They're in Detroit. They're in the dealership business, and some of them were engineers at GM. And we found 5 acres north of Warren, Michigan, and we set up a compound. They shipped the trucks to us from Flint Assembly, and we did a full receiving inspection on them, turbocharged them, put in the instrumentation, you know, boost and EGT and all that.
Yeah.
And then we shipped them back to Flint, and they went out from there to dealers.
Nice.
So if you want to really get your history correct, the Dodge Cummins is not the first turbocharged diesel pickup. We beat them by a year.
6.2.
Take that, Dwight Kroon. I know you're listening. No, that's awesome.
The Banks turbocharged 6.2 was the factory fit. So, and he let me leave my name on the castings, which I thought was wonderful.
It's pretty nice of him.
Yeah.
In fact, Motor Trend, when they finally came out with a turbo 6.5, Motor Trend took a 1-ton with our system and a 6.2 and ran it off against the 6.5. There's a big article in Motor Trend. I've got it in my library here. So that was the end of our turbo production and the beginning of their in-house turbo production at GM. And the 6.2 beat the 6.5.
That's something I never thought I would hear. and Gale, I appreciate your time so much. We're going to take a real quick pause for our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk about some of the new stuff you guys got going on over there at Banks Engineering.
You got it.
We want to give Nick Pregnant from Calibrated Power a chance to tell you more about custom tractor tuning. If you operate a farm or know someone who does, we think you're going to like what he has to say.
We've been talking a lot about our tractor calibrations lately, and it's for a very good reason. We're helping farmers like Warren Newman of Winnebago, Illinois realize that upgrading through Calibrated Power's tuning makes sense for any operation where the bottom line matters. And you can get these same results for yourself with our Power Manager. In just minutes, you can tune your tractor. There's no downtime, no labor charge like with some of our competitors' products. It's easy to install, but that's not the whole story. Our tractor calibrations work within the manufacturer's powertrain specifications, so unlike our competitors, we don't fool the tractor's computer. It still has full control over the fuel usage and can accurately track fuel usage during operation. Our tuning method delivers calibrated power, The message is in our name. For a given fuel rate, there's an appropriate amount of boost, appropriate amount of timing, fuel pressure, pilot injection, and emission systems performance. When you're using our competitors' products that are simply adding fuel to the mix, you don't get those benefits. You don't get the extra boost, you don't get the extra timing. So you run into long-term reliability issues, piston failures, emission systems failures. There's a reason that the factory uses a calibration to uprate a tractor through the series. It's because it's the most effective way at managing the combustion parameters, period. For Warren Newman, it means operating in a higher gear, more than a mile an hour faster, and in a lower rev range. That's efficiency that you can see in action.
Well, I used to burn over a half a gallon to the acre, and now I'm burning about a third of a gallon to the acre. So it's made a big change. I mean, you do 300 acres in a day and you burn, not quite a quarter, but, that makes a lot of difference.
Unlike hardware modifications, our calibrations can be easily removed and the stock calibration can be restored with a simple reflash. Our calibrations have the potential to help any operation with a tractor under load save money and time. Give us a call today and ask about our tractor tunes and see how they can make a difference in your farming operation.
Excellent. And we're back with Gale Banks. So excited for this episode.
We've been waiting for a couple weeks.
It has. Danny and I have been absolutely giddy with excitement, and we even dragged Nick into it.
I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Gale, one of the reasons that we were so excited to talk to you is because all of the new stuff you guys have going on over there at Banks Engineering. I know we've all been listening to the podcast you've been on with Adam Carolla and Smoking Tire and CarCast and all of this, and we've taken a look at like your Sidewinder Type R, your road racing truck.
Nasty.
Your dragster with a blower and twin turbos,
Nasty.
Your marine applications. It's just all the stuff we see going on there is so cool. We know with a limited time today, we wanted to dive in what we thought was the coolest thing, and that's the military contract we keep hearing about.
Sure.
It sounds like you guys have cracked so many new kind of little nugs of knowledge here. We'd love to hear more about it. Can you explain kind of overall the military contract for our listeners, and we'll dive in with some great questions.
Yeah, I can't tell you horsepower or torque numbers.
That's all right.
Let's start with that. So, but I can tell you a good deal more. Our involvement with military really starts with marine engines. In 1976, we worked with the Navy on high output marine engines for 40 years now.
Oh wow!
In fact. Before the break, we were talking about the Dakota we ran at Bonneville. That got a lot of ink. We drove it all around the country. We drove it on the Hot Rod Power Tour.
I remember that.
It was the fastest, most fuel-efficient vehicle driving from Wisconsin to Florida that year. We had the fastest vehicle on the Power Tour, and it was a diesel pickup. So the guys...
I'm just smiling ear from ear. I'm sorry, I just got to tell our listener. I'm smiling ear from ear just to hear that. The fastest one there, the most fuel efficient, and the only diesel
truck.
Yeah.
Truck.
I just want to say I signed up over 1,500 people at that event at Miller Park, and they were all in the Power Tour, and it was so cool to get to meet everybody then. And I didn't get to meet the Banks guys, but I was there. It was very cool. We had a CXT, and we brought from International, and it just everybody was hooting and hollering over it.
What a cool thing.
What was so cool is when we started this, Cummins was really hurting. Their stock was about $26.50, and normally their stock's $120. Yeah. And they were hurting, and the guys over at Chrysler were hurting. They weren't selling trucks, and the diesel was suffering. So when I did this, a guy named John Stang, who was on the board at Cummins, I made friends with him out here in Long Beach at a diesel talk, and he and I were both presenting and doing our slideshows. And I told him I want to go 300 with a diesel and want to do it with my Streamliner. Well, it ended up being a pickup truck, and I'm glad it was. We then took the truck to every Cummins plant, and the people just went crazy, loving it. We took it over to the new Chrysler Tech Center in Auburn Hills, and it sat in the lobby for 2 weeks, and it was on Chrysler TV every day.
Yeah, showing it off.
About 6 months later, guys were coming up to me, both Cummins guys and Mopar guys, telling me, "Thank you for helping us sell our engines. Thank you for helping us sell these." Honest to God.
Well, those things got a good name after that. I mean, that's
you want to talk about a humbling
ISP.
experience?
Yeah.
That was a humbling experience, man.
That thing's rock solid. I mean, it's a foundation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like when we talk about diesel performance, you really don't have that conversation without talking about Cummins. I mean,
and the common rail Cummins is just it's a benchmark. I mean, it's drivability and power output.
I should mention Bosch. I've been doing stuff with Bosch. We did the prototype turbo work for Volvo in 1976, 77. They came out with their turbo B21 red block in 1980, and we did the prototypes mainly because I wanted to learn about the O2 sensor. Bosch and Volvo were coming up with the O2 sensor, and they offered the turbo development to me, and I was on it. I'd have done it for free to learn about the O2. So, anyhow, that engine that ran at Bonneville in that truck, the Navy guys saw it. So they called me and said, "Can you do a marine version of that engine? We want to do a marine version of your record engine." And they were also considering using a Duramax. Now, mind you, it was like 01, and they'd just come out with the LB7.
Right.
And it wasn't real powerful or real torquey.
Well, I remember there was a lot of speculation about the integrity of the platform, too.
Oh, a lot of talk about the aluminum cylinder heads and on and on. And so we all met at Southwest Research Institute. Where's the Alamo? What the hell
in Texas?
Is that? Yeah, it's in Texas.
We're in Illinois, but
anyhow, wherever
the Alamo is.
Near the Alamo. That's where this institute is, and we tore down both engines and laid the parts out. And when you looked at the Cummins Conrod and you looked at the GM Conrod, you kind of went for the Cummins.
Kind of obvious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, we'd already done a proof of concept. We made it was soft. It was a Bonneville and street tune, and there was really no big tuning experience with the engine. We made 735 horsepower. And, I don't know. It was 1,100 and some pound-feet of torque. Turned the engine 3,800 maximum.
So we take this Cummins experience, and you're so strong on the Dakota project and on the Marine project, and we got this military project with Oshkosh.
And that's where we're going.
Why not the natural? Like, why not use the Cummins, right?
So, real quick, could I jump? What motor is in the Oshkosh? Can you catch us up on that?
Yeah, the Oshkosh is a JLTV, which means Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. I call it the Jolt for a couple of reasons. It's like a Baja trophy truck, only it's military. I mean, in its performance and in its suspension, its ability to go through rough country at unbelievable speeds, its crew protection, everything is so much better than any of the competitors we had. It's insanely good. We've done a lot of work. Why the Duramax? Well, we continued to work with the Duramax, even though we designed the Navy engine around the Cummins. We continued to work with the Duramax because their Duramax had so much better total airflow into the cylinders than the Cummins did. Each cylinder, I'm talking about stock versus stock.
Right.
If you add 2 cylinders, you add 4 more intake valves.
Right.
And, comparing both engines, 4-valve engines.
Yeah, you got a better breathing engine for sure in the V8.
Well, and each cylinder, Duramax cylinder breathes better. So I'm kind of, I want to get air density, engines are CFM machines.
Yep.
You change the density with turbochargers and intercoolers and things like that. And you want each cubic foot to have the highest air density. In other words, pounds of air per 1,000 cubic feet is how we look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Good air.
And air-fuel ratio is pounds to pounds of fuel to pounds of air.
Right.
So I want to get the pounds of air in the engine. And the heads are so much better at that time and even today. What we did on the Cummins built an engine. I went back to the skunk work and talked to everybody at lunch on a Friday, and there was 102 people there, and 40 some of them volunteered on their own time to help out with our effort for Bonneville.
Yeah.
So they put together a pre-production engine, and they put a little bit bigger turbo on than they had intended. Now it was a 40 instead of a 35, and they made 402 horsepower with it, and they put it in a truck and sent it out here. I put it on my engine dyno, one of my engine dynos, and made 405 horsepower, so we knew we were talking the same language, dyno to dyno.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, if you know how to operate a dyno and how to correct it and without cheating, they are comparable, guys. So we
love to have you on another podcast to talk about that, Gale.
There's a lot to talk about.
That's a great subject.
It is a huge subject in the aftermarket.
Well, then we'll do one.
Yeah,
we'll
right.
I like it.
I've written a number of articles through the years on dynamometers. Anyhow, back to the issue here.
Mm-hmm.
We took the head off the Cummins because I wanted to port the head, and it had, of course, the intake manifold cast in. So we machined the manifold off, and I designed a cast aluminum intake manifold with a 4-inch inlet, and put the logo Big Hoss on it.
Yeah, I had one of those on the truck.
Well, that's where it came from. It came from the Dakota Sidewinder, and we did the head, we did the intake manifold, we extrude honed a stock exhaust manifold, we left the HX40 turbo on it, put it on the pump, and it made 537 horsepower with no other changes. No change in valve size, nothing. We just did the intake manifold, the ports, the exhaust manifold, and ran the same turbo. That's how much better the damn thing processed the air in the intake manifold. So, you can put the density in the intake manifold, but getting it through that and
little
into the
peanut
cylinder
port,
is another matter.
Yeah.
So the guys at Cummins said, I'm not going to name any names, but if they're listening to this podcast, they'll remember this very well. They thought we were bullshitting. So is it okay to say that on your podcast?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't have many problems with fucking swearing. Yeah, we've been cleaning it up for you, Gale. Please.
I was pinning their bullshit meter. Mm-hmm. So I said, listen, let me do one for you. So we did one for them. We sent it back. They put it on the dyno with another engine that was right around the same 404 horsepower, right about there. And lo and behold, 530-something. So, of course, you got to calibrate the fuel to go along with the newfound air. You don't just bolt on the head and make more airflow and make more power.
Yeah, right. Got to balance that out.
But at the same EGT,
that's saying a lot.
There's two ways I compare. It's either at the same EGT, which is old school, or it's at the same
air-fuel ratio.
Yeah, using a wideband O2 sensor.
Right.
So
we just started getting into
that's
that.
the more modern way to make the comparison. That's the unifying comparison.
Yeah.
I see guys put up stuff they've dynoed, and they never even discuss what makes these tests equal. But this great equalizer, A-B comparison is same air-fuel ratio.
Same air-fuel ratio. I love how you brought up EGT, right, because Nobody speaks to the reliability of their engine they're building on their dyno test or the parts combination they're putting together. They're just simply, we can make 700, 750 horsepower, but it's proved 1,650 exhaust.
I'm pretty sure they proved reliability. Right? They just said it could do 700. It did it. I don't know what more reliable you want. Right? You wanted to do it twice? Well, what are you, greedy? No, I'm right there with you, Gale. Yeah, it's crazy, and that's.
I'm gonna give you something that really, really, really makes your point. When you get on one of those inertial dynos, which is a big roller that you just speed up and then you kind of derive mystically a horsepower number from that.
DynoJet.
Did you say Dyno Joe?
DynoJet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oops. Different.
So we're on the same page.
So the point being, the sweep takes about 3 or 4, maybe 5 seconds. A truck pull, that's a little more. You got some more huevos going on there. You're testing your manhood now. You're going to go for 15 or 20 seconds. Well, let me tell you about my world.
Please.
That engine we did for the Navy, that Cummins design. It had to go 800 hours at full torque or full horsepower, wide open throttle, 85% of the time.
What?
Wow.
800 hours. So don't come to me with your 4-second or your 15-second run and talk to me about power. Now, hey, I'm really an endurance racer, but I love Bonneville. That semi-endurance. You go 5 or 6 miles at wide open throttle.
Yeah.
And then it used to be you turn around and come back the other way in an hour. But
it adds the third dimension, It's the third dimension of racing. It's like, can you do it again?
My deal has always been boat racing, and we raced in the Colorado River back then, a 9-hour endurance race.
Oh. So
up and down the Colorado River, 13-mile lap for 9 hours. That's nothing compared to this. We do
800 hours.
It's called the NATO engine test. It's 400 hours. The Navy wanted a double NATO. So
that's 33 days.
The block that, about 200 and some hours in, we tore the top off the block. It literally, the deck surface separated from the cylinder right at the top of the water jacket. You got these horizontal cracks in the cylinders, and the water came in, and the compression went the other way, into the water jacket. Wow.
So the Duramax that you built for this for the Oshkosh, this thing holds up to 33 days, wide open throttle at full torque, full horsepower output.
We run a NATO on those, so it's 400 hours.
Oh, abbreviated time. Sorry.
Yeah, 16 days. Right, 15 to 16 days, right.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah,
guys,
I love the 30. Yeah. I love that 33-day number, by the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
By the way, we iterated the Cummins block, ultimately doing compacted graphite iron blocks, 2 of which I still have here, and those are brutally good. I don't know that they've ever done that in a production engine, but they're doing it for these engines.
Really?
So the engines are running all around the world now. So back to it, the Duramax.
The Duramax.
Yeah.
And the military vehicle.
So my first question for you, Gale, on Duramax and the military. Every military vehicle that I've been familiar with prior to the Duramax has been mechanically injected, mechanically controlled. I feel like they do their best to exclude electronics from these things. And here you are, putting a common rail, full electronic setup on a military vehicle. How did you get that past their sniff test?
Well, first of all, I did my own ECU, which is based on a Bosch platform, but the firmware and software is all us.
Okay.
And it's as nuclear hardened as it can be. The The ECU is kind of cool though, because I use it for racing too. So when we first did it, I thought, okay, V8 Duramax, 6,000 RPM, we'll never get there. And so that was our first design, I don't know, 12 years ago, something like that. And then lo and behold, I had a twin turbo road race engine I put in my dragster, and we went out and took a lap and hit 6,300. And
turns out you got there.
It scatter fired, and I went, oh man! So now it's an 8,000 RPM ECU. It'll run 1 cylinder to 8 cylinders. We've run Cummins on it. We run our V6 VM Motori 3-liter on it. Yeah. And those are in the Badger that Boeing makes. It's our engine in that.
Okay.
It's a little military vehicle that goes in a V-22 Osprey. All-wheel drive, all-wheel steer, diesel.
They're slick little vehicles. I was looking at them the other day, actually.
So we know the control system's up to par, right? Like the ECUs.
Yeah. So the rest of it is, you're right. The legacy, and there's 160-some thousand of them still in service, is the Humvee.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we know from experience they've always run 6.5s, upgraded 6.5s, not the same stuff we saw in pickup trucks back in the day, but
not just 6.5s, even the bigger stuff, the 5 tons, the 2.5 tons. I mean, you never see an electronic engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole deal here is we had to get over that hump. Mm-hmm. One of the things that to point to was the fact that a more hostile environment is the Navy usage because of moisture and salt and all that crap.
Sure, yeah, just brutal.
And the boats take G-loads. These are big boats that go very fast through rough water that'll break your legs or ankles. These are boats you operate standing up because there's no seat that will take the G number without
busting
making
your
you
spine
an inch
out.
shorter every hit. So they have never got my ass in one of them. with them running. I had one here for 4 years. We used for develop out here on the West Coast, but
softer waters.
You get some of these Navy guys, and they're pretty macho. They'll beat the hell out of you and laugh in your face.
Yeah,
so
I'll tell you.
I don't want to ever have that experience.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I actually got to meet 2 of your guys out at XDP's event this year, and I won't say a late night after the event, but a night after the event, they were telling us some stories about some of the military trucks you guys have been working on, and I believe it was Chris was telling me about how he got in to ride and let a Marine drive one time. And I'll let him tell the story if you ever get to meet him, but he promised it would never happen again with the whitest face I have ever seen, like he just saw a ghost.
Even the side-by-sides that they use, we've got one of them here we're working on to make it more reliable and a little more powerful. Along with, we also have a Frag 5 brand new Humvee, Frag 5 being the best armor level.
Yes.
And it's got the gun turret on it too, but no gun, unfortunately.
Aww.
What fun is that?
So it's not a military vehicle.
No.
It's a peacekeeper vehicle. Yeah.
It's got side windows made out of 3-inch synthetic sapphire,
Daily driver.
But daily driver.
That'll make the neighbors think twice.
So the whole thing with those things is the Marine engine kind of proved the reliability of electronics in a hostile environment.
Gotcha.
And these guys, a lot of military, they work together. Let me put it that way. Especially special forces, they have a common ground called JSOC, which is Joint Special Operations Command, and that's everybody, including Air Force Special Forces. And they plan, and, I'm working with JSOC as well as the individual services.
Gotcha.
So we got the electronics. They have. Here's the deal. They have electronics in their comms gear, in their threat detection gear.
Exactly.
In their targeting gear. It's all there.
Yeah.
Why not have it on the engine?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The whole deal was getting the guys who actually work on the engines familiar with in-field maintenance.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be the biggest challenge, is getting them up to speed on the diagnostics and troubleshooting and the new systems, really.
And getting about a military career, 20 years, and you're ready to go. So once those guys timed out that were anti-electronics, it got easier as well.
Yeah. What about the fuel quality?
The military vehicles have to run on JP8 because that is a common fuel with the high-performance aircraft. It'll fuel anything.
It has less lubricity than standard number 2 diesel, right?
Yeah, but we ran the whole gamut with injector and pump durability with JP8. We thought we were going to have to dose, but it turns out we haven't had to dose the fuel. I use LML blockheads, crank, all of that.
But you're using
they're not building out. They don't build LMMs anymore, and they certainly don't build LMLs. I got the last. I don't know. We in first week of July, we ran 2,100 of them at the plant.
Jesus.
And that's going to be it for our military program. We go to L5P once we finish off with those. So there's stuff on my Facebook.
Oh yeah, we've been following all that stuff. I've seen you post in the forums, in the LML forums and stuff, and we appreciate the L5P upgrades because we don't get the same.
I'm starting to leak out some L5P stuff. It's getting. I don't want to ever scoop GM marketing with anything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
we have some private forums that GM marketing would never see.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. I think it'll be. I don't want to scoop the magazine either, but one of the diesel magazines, I'm going to do a full teardown on the engine, just like I did 5 or 6 years ago with the V6. We were running that V6 3 years before you saw one in a Ram pickup.
Yeah.
So, because we sell the damn thing, So we've been running the L5P for 2 years now. And it's going to be the JLTV engine of the future. It is such a massive improvement.
And when you say that, Gale, you mean every element of every element of the Jolt is going to use L5P. You're going to use the injection system, the pump, the crank, the rods, the pistons.
No, the injection remains ours.
So you're going to continue to use your own. Okay, interesting.
Well, let me clarify that. I'm sorry. The control remains ours. The injection is Denso.
Right.
Okay.
So it's
now there's a
Banks Bosch ECU. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running Denso with a Bosch-based ECU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's way easier to say than it was to do.
I can only hope that's not because the Denso ECU is that much of a pain in the butt, because I know that's next on my plate when that thing comes out. And
yeah, they've never made a new ECU simpler than the one it replaced.
One can hope.
No. They forgot to put security restrictions on it. Don't worry. This one will be easy.
I mean, Bosch is Bosch, right? But you can hope you switch to Denso and maybe, who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe not.
All I care about is, can I run the system? And the guys at Denso were timid at first, but then they came around and they gave us the waveform, what was their injector requires different driver technology
right.
than the Bosch injector. So we had to work through all of that. We've got different sensors on the new engine, different location of the crank sensor. We do an awful lot of work on vibration damper development, and I know why they moved the crank sensor from the front to the rear, because we see twist in the crankshaft front to rear at certain speeds and loads that's pretty pronounced.
That's
so
interesting.
Putting it at the rear stabilizes it relative to everything else. It doesn't make it, the crank twists and then recovers, and actually goes backwards and then recovers. You've got, so I tried to hold in my endurance engines the twisting to plus or minus a quarter of a degree.
Wow.
Whereas factory is, where?
I don't use the factory elastomeric damper, the one with a rubber in it.
Right.
Mainly because if you run as long as I run at high power, it melts the rubber.
Okay.
Now, if you want to do it quicker, there's guys that do elastomeric dampers for you guys to use, the aftermarket, that will fail your crankshaft in a heartbeat.
But it's an option. You're saying I can do that if I want to, right?
Appreciate your consideration.
I've never seen an aftermarket damper that was better than the stock one, with the exception of viscous dampers. The old Hudai, which is now built by the Horschel brothers back in Buffalo, New York. I think they sell them as, the hell's their brand name?
Well, those guys are getting a lot of phone calls after this podcast.
Yeah, they probably will.
That's interesting that you talk about the crank sensor location, because on our Ultimate Callout Challenge truck, we're seeing, so the 8.3 liter that we started with a foundation, and then the 5.9 ISB, the crank triggers on the dampener. And then on the bigger engines, it goes to the back of the crankshaft. And we were trying to move it up to the front of the crankshaft, but we figured, they probably put it back there for a reason.
Well, I'm telling you why.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. So we're going to leave it back there.
There's some wisdom to that.
Yeah.
So the damper thing, it amazes me. I'm doing a crankshaft article on how you design crankshafts. And then it'll be, KJ was probably going to put it up on their website at Diesel Power in the next few weeks. I'm following with one on, these are not commercials, these are just how shit works.
We appreciate
I'm following with, in other words, I'm not selling, I'm just telling.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't like to get on with guys like you and do a
Danny's going to steal that from you, Gale.
I'm going to steal that.
There's like 3 one-liners today that I've seen Danny's whole body just cringe.
I'm not selling. I'm just telling over here.
You know what, man? Every guy I've ever met named Danny, just like you are.
Just an asshole.
Thanks, Paul.
We all heard Gale say it, all right?
Yeah, right. No, I meant... I'm not selling. I'm just telling. He jumped right on it.
Yeah.
Are you a selling machine, Danny? Is that what the deal is here?
I get after it a little bit.
If there was a T-shirt that said "selling machine,"
I bet you
Danny
do,
would be wearing it.
We have a lot of fun over here.
So on the L5P, there's a lot to be told there, and I've probably used up your 45 minutes here.
No, actually, I think we used up your... I don't know if you know this, Gale, but I have an unlimited amount of time to talk with you. I think it's not the same reciprocated, and that's okay. Not all relationships are. But I know that we're doing a second episode, and I would love to get balls deep into the L5P during it.
Well, yes. I got to tell you, you can slam them. This is going to be a good go.
Well, we'd love to hear that because on the LML, we are breaking crankshafts. We are breaking all sorts of shit.
Well, I'll tell you just a little aside on the crankshaft thing before we wrap this.
Yeah.
There's on the forums and magazine articles, I see these guys are breaking Duramax crankshafts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to tell you something. I did a road race package, carbon fiber pickup truck to road race for GMC back in the mid-'80s, the mid-2000s, 2005, 6. And I kept killing transmissions and rear axles. And I mean, I ran everything you could buy. The truck, very fast. But, I mean, open wheel fast. Open wheel big block
yes.
car fast. and I'm not... that's running the same course qualifying for a 3-hour endurance race. 163 vehicles were trying to qualify up at Buttonwillow. We took our road race D-Max up there, and we practiced for about 3 hours with everybody else. They were pissed because our vehicle was so wide and the track was so narrow, but we're running a pickup truck, for God's sake. And out of all those cars, only 3 of them were quicker than 2 minutes a lap. There was an open wheel McLaren, big block McLaren, injected big block that ran 157s. There was a 10-cylinder SRT-10 Viper road race car. I mean, a pure race car ran 158s, and our diesel ran 159s.
Huh.
Now, their pit strategy was multiple pits, and our pit strategy was once. So that we could, you know, all I'm saying is we started the race and we blew the rear end in the first turn, coming out of the first turn.
Ugh.
We had a 3-hour rear end. And we've used up our 3 hours practicing. So, I mean, I brought it home and I said, I had waited for that rear end. It was a big Bonneville Streamliner rear end. I think it had, you know, a quick change.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like a 10 and a half, 11-inch ring gear. Some famous guys build it. Guys who build quick change know what they're doing. But diesels have big torque spikes. They might put out big torque, but they also put out big spikes.
Yeah.
And that's what kills the trannies and the axles. So I pulled the engine out of the road race truck, put it in my S10 Pro Stock truck, went out and took a lap and set the record. And then we fooled with it for about a year. We got down to a 777 at $180, and
I remember watching
we put
that
it away. Now,
yeah.
Cosmic, this is the Cosmic part. Our car number is 777. That's our NHRA number for our driver. So we ran a 777, put it in the NHRA museum. Record was pretty safe. Year later, NHRDA was running their final race in Topeka, Kansas. And he asked if we'd bring the truck out and run it. So we went. It rained on Saturday, and there was all kinds of cobwebs in it from the museum. And we finally got it all the spiders killed and all the cobwebs pulled out of the damn thing. And on Sunday, we won the event. We won the Nationals with that pickup truck over a funny car, as I recall. And guess what our ET was?
777.
Oh, shit. So it goes beyond Cosmic now. We put it back in the NHRA museum where it sits today.
Until it has to run another 777.
Yeah. You know what? It's been beat finally. I think we held the record for 3 or 4 years. And finally, young Wade Moody built a S10 of his own, and ran, I don't know, 740s, something like that. And I guess he crashed it real hard because he built a dragster.
Yeah.
And anyhow, much more to talk about, and getting into L5P would be a kick in the butt for me. So on the crankshaft story, though.
I feel like you're going to tell us that truck had a stock crankshaft in it, Gale.
Sure did. Same in my dragster. I'm now, I've stepped it up because I'm doing a big pin crank. We started about 4 years ago for the marine engines. I increased the crank throw diameter, did a split cap rod, spent about 2 years with Carrillo iterating that rod to get one that would clamp down round. We created our own rod bearing size, worked with Clevi to tool a unique bearing diameter. I'll never ever do this again in my life. It took, honest to God, to get it all sweet and all happy took about 3 years.
Yeah. So, and then the factory comes out with the L5P, right?
Yeah. But there's no cross-pollination. They did their thing and we did our thing, and until I actually opened up the beta engine, I had no idea that we got the beta engine, maybe 18, 20 months ago, maybe more than that. There were no rods in it. It was just an empty shell for me to use for form and fit, design my outside stuff.
Yeah.
And then we got some CAD data, but there was no insides. So I didn't know they had a split cap rod. No, they don't tell you stuff like that. And
They don't send memos
Gary
out
Arvin,
and say what's coming.
Gary Arvin, I consider him to be a friend. He's the chief engineer on this engine. We signed a non-disclosure agreement anyway, but what I don't know, I can't talk about in my sleep, Wait till you see this thing. It is a massive undertaking. Jim Miniker, by the way, was the number 2 guy on this project, and Jim is a racer. He ran a Firebird at Bonneville, going after my record, as a matter of fact.
You should give us Jim's number so we can get him on the next podcast with us.
Well, I don't know what the hell Jim is allowed to say either. but all I've got to tell you is everything about the L5P that could be strengthened is strengthened. It is GM all the way. The only thing it shares with the previous engine is the bore centers. It doesn't even share the deck height. The deck height is different.
So we got GM fans drooling here.
Yeah.
They're on Chevrolet.com or GMC right now, and they're building their truck.
I know the hair on my arm is standing up right now. I cannot wait.
They're loving it.
So we're getting ready. In fact, we're going to be sending an engine back to perform and fit in the Jolt, and it's going to be a fun go. We're building two more dyno cells right now for the production engines. But I got to tell you, we have got we can do a show on the L5P if you want to.
Well, that's the next 45 minutes of
and
this.
that's absolutely coming next week for all of our listeners.
If I had it my way, I'd do a show with Gale about aviation.
Danny, I can't believe
for the next
you.
one. But the L5P, I mean, we can go deep into both of them.
Here's the deal. Did you see my last post on Air Force One on Facebook?
I caught that. I catch all your articles that you post.
I don't put up enough. I really don't. I got to get after it. It's just.
It's a lot to do. It's a lot to keep up with.
Well, here's the deal. We spent the better part of a decade chasing. This is Banks 1.9. That was, every business cycle. I flash myself with new software, and and 1.9 that was chasing and winning the biggest engine contract in the military business of this century. And I'm sure
it's impressive. I mean, it's an inspiration, Gale. I got to tell you. I mean, as a small business owner, and I'm sure I don't speak for just myself, but we see your posts on the number of engines you have, on the projects you're working on, and it's impressive, man. It really is.
I wish I knew half of what you forgot.
He got it. Danny got his one-liner in. We can end the episode.
There it is, right there.
There it is.
Here's the deal. I haven't forgot any of it.
Oh.
You're good. That's why you're the man.
And I'm applying that all in Banks 2.0. Wait till you see the charge air cooler stuff we're doing, and I've got a new instrument that replaces a boost gauge. We can talk about that one day.
Yeah.
It doesn't measure boost air pressure. It measures boost air density. Bad.
Yes.
I love it. I mean, I think we need to talk about that. We need to talk about O2 sensors in diesels. We need to talk about air density. We need to talk about mass airflow. People, you know what I mean? People need to understand what that means.
But there's 2 density machines or more on most every diesel, and that's turbochargers and intercoolers.
Mm-hmm.
How good are they? How good are the billet wheels? Nobody has an instrument that will measure whether or not.
Thank you.
A screechy-ass billet wheel made in China is better than one you took out.
It turns out Gale Banks my best friend because we say the same shit. I don't know if you guys knew that, but me and Gale are best friends.
Yeah, you dyno. Yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome.
We'll have to do one on boost air density, ambient air density, add, bad, and manifold air density, mad.
Yeah, people need to understand the difference of where they're putting their boost gauge and what the motor's actually seeing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you go out and you do all this turbocharging, you buy all this equipment. How good is it? You're making a bigger boost number, but what about air temperature?
Right.
You're losing boost through an intercooler. Well,
but I spent so much money on my turbochargers, Gale.
There's no way I have a boost leak. I'm making 37 pounds of boost.
Here's
we see
the deal.
This stuff all day.
We are going to release the bad gauge, the boost air density instrument. You can know how much exactly you gained or lost by changing that wheel. Every guy on the street will be able to do it. And you know why there isn't another one? Because nobody ever has done this.
I sincerely hope people care enough to buy it instead of listening to the wicked wheel.
Easy. Yeah. So there's 2. We can do the one on the L5P. That's current and interesting. But measuring boost air density and manifold air density, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because everything we do on the outside of the engine that gets air into the intake manifold, that's expensive stuff.
It's expensive and it needs to be validated.
Well, I would think if you had a gauge and it cost you a couple $100, why wouldn't you? You know?
Exactly.
Well, we're going to dive into that, the L5P, and a lot more with Gale Banks next week here on the Diesel Performance Podcast. Gale, sincerely, thank you so much, man. I'm so excited for our next episode together.
I sure as hell enjoyed it.
That makes 4 of us.
Thank you very much, Paul and Nick and Danny, all 3 of you.
It's been a real pleasure, Gale. I really appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
The Diesel Performance Podcast is brought to you by Calibrated Power Solutions, home of DuramaxTuner.com. Calibrated Power develops emissions-equipped calibrations for a wide variety of diesel powertrains, including Duramax, Cummins, Power Stroke, John Deere, Case, New Holland, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920. That's 815-568-7920. If you'd like to contact the podcast, send us a message through Facebook or email Paul at DuramaxTuner.com or Chris at CEHMKE@DuramaxTuner.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Your feedback is appreciated. Please rate and review us on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and by all means, let us know if you have any ideas for a podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
Guys are like, oh, that's just an LML with an L5P hood. It's like, you fucking idiot. Like,
I want to meet. If you were one of our listeners and you made that comment, please send me a message.
Please send Paul the message. I don't want to talk to you.